Here in British Columbia, innovation is everywhere. From how we engage with natural resources to evolving transportation and creating industry defining technologies, BC innovators are putting their mark on tomorrow and addressing the crucial social, economic, and environmental challenges we face around the world. And at Innovate BC, we help foster the ideas and solutions emerging out of our province so that all British Columbians can benefit from a thriving and inclusive innovation economy. So, what does that mean? We are champions of innovation and changemakers, relationship builders and community connectors, drivers of ecosystem data and storytellers. We work to create more opportunities for everyone to participate in our innovation ecosystem, working with strategic partners in BC and beyond. And our programs are designed to connect innovators to the resources they need to succeed. Looking to start and scale your business? Or learn how to navigate human resources, digital marketing, or intellectual property? We'll connect you with experts in your field and mentors to help your business grow. Need funding? Our grant programs can help you hire talent, commercialize your research, and validate your technology. Searching for innovative solutions to your most pressing challenges? Tap into our network of BC's most promising innovators and solution providers. We help companies large and small across industries drive innovation forward because BC is the best place to start, grow, and invest for tomorrow. Begin today and grow your idea with us. Innovate BC.
All right, hello everybody. Today we have Kimberly Ballantyne, and she's from the
Opaskwayak Cree Nation.
Opaskwayak Cree Nation that's located in Manitoba. She's the first female pilot, and she'll be talking to us about her journey. I'll just pass off the mic to you.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint for you guys. Okay, get the switch. Okay, how was that? Is it good on your end? Okay. So make sure I share my sound. Okay, so Tante, hello. My name is Kimberly Ballantyne, and I'd like to thank Innovate BC for inviting me to come share my story with you on my pilot journey and how my education has enabled me to provide a better life for my family and me. So, let's see if I could do the next slide. So I'm a mother to my two beautiful children, Nova and Leonardo. My son's birthday is actually on the 12th, so he'll be 8 years old soon. So I am from Opaskwayak Cree Nation. I grew up in Umperville Settlement, which is an isolated part of our community. And it's located about 700 kilometers north of Winnipeg. So currently I live in Winnipeg. And both my parents suffered trauma early in their lives and were unable to care for me. So I was raised by my maternal grandparents, Flora and Malcolm Crane. So in our household, we all grew up with a sense of humor, which is one of the fondest memories I carry with me. And like many other Indigenous families, our housing was crowded and moldy with no running water. And it is well known that the Indigenous community faces different challenges and barriers than the non-Indigenous community. And that is what I've experienced. So I was exposed to the aviation industry very early in my life. My dream to become a pilot began when I was 4 years old. And I remember telling my grandfather, Malcolm, that I wanted to become a pilot. And I remember looking up at the sky and always seeing a lot of plane traffic. And I found out later that I lived between two airports. So one of them is Mississippi Airways and the other one's the Paw Airport, which Comair actually flies to. And that's who I am currently employed with, is with Comair. I also work for them as their community engagement specialist while training to complete my commercial pilot's license. So my grandparents could see that the world was changing and encouraged me to pursue my dream of becoming a pilot as well as getting an education. So I was walking in two roads growing up, as I had traditional grandparents who worked very hard and were still living off the land. But they wanted me to get my education at the same time. So I grew up fishing, hunting, and watching my grandparents harvest a deer or moose hide. And I grew up eating traditional foods such as moose meat and fried pickerel, which are two of my favorites to this day. And I am also a fancy shawl dancer. My grandmother handmade all of my outfits, and I now see that my grandparents were entrepreneurs. And looking back, I understand now too that they're also taken advantage of for their talents. This is a picture of my mom. Her name is Esther, and she's wearing an entire outfit made by my grandparents. So all the beading is original and highlights their skills. My grandmother was very skilled at beading, and she would sell her mucklucks for prices much lower than what they were actually worth. The work she was doing today would go for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. But this is how they survived and took care of us. So before I went to school, I did not really understand that we were poor. I was always fed and had clothing. My grandparents were very protective of me, but could not shield me from everything. I went through my own trauma growing up, and I was bullied in school, mostly for the clothes that I would wear, but I tried to not let that get to me. So I'll share the story behind this photo of my daughter and I and the events leading up to this moment. So in 2004, I graduated from Margaret Barber Collegiate Institute with my high school diploma, and I was the first in my family to do so. I then started the process of applying for funding for post-secondary education from my band, and I was put on a waiting list. There is a misconception in society that Indigenous people get free funding to go to school. But what most people don't know is that every band is funded differently, and educational funding is part of the treaty agreements between the various communities and the government of Canada. So despite being on this waiting list, I never forgot about my dream of becoming a pilot and completing my education. So before I left home to go to university, I read a book called The Secret, and I made a list for my vision board. And my goals were to finish university, find my first professional job with my degree, buy my own vehicle, save up for a down payment for a house, and then buy a house, and then finally go for my pilot's license. So when I was 23, I left my community, and this was the scariest thing for me because I had to leave on my own to further my education. And in April 2009, I left to pursue my dream of completing a degree at the University of Manitoba and to one day become a pilot. So when I left, I only had a bag of clothes, really small TV, like one of those box TVs. Everything like is flat screen now, but that's the TV I left the paw with, and then a blow up mattress and my portfolio that contained everything I would need to try find a job once I got to Winnipeg. And there's this program I actually took for life skills, and they gave you all of these different certificates. So it was perfect timing before I actually left the pod to come to Winnipeg. I left with a Serving It Safe certificate, which is part of the industry I was in. I was in customer service, so I was bartending and waitressing at the same time. I also got my CPR first aid, just little things like that that would, you know, help it make it easier once I got to Winnipeg to look for a job. So I moved out to Winnipeg with a friend and ended up renting a room in her home. And because I was still on a waiting list for school funding and growing impatient, I took out a student loan to attend the University of Manitoba. So I'd been on this waiting list now for like 5 years for asking or requesting funding to go to post-secondary. So like I was just so sick of being in the pond. I was wanting to just start, you know, like with my vision board I created. So I don't recommend anyone taking out a student loan if you can get the band funding, because like I actually just paid that off. And that was back in 2009 when I took the loan. So after taking out the student loan, I applied to the U of M and was accepted. So back then, the requirements for a pilot to get a job with any airliner was you needed a degree as well. But the rules have changed now. So pilots are not required to have a separate degree to get a job. So 3 days after arriving in Winnipeg, I found a job at Cherry Creek Cafe. And a year after living with my friend, I moved out because it was too far from the University of Manitoba. My first year, I would have to take 3 buses just to get to the university every morning. So I would have to wake up at like 5 a.m. every morning and then make sure that I made it to the bus stop for my first bus at 6:30 in the morning. So imagine that for a year. It, you know, it got really exhausting, but so after moving out of my friend's place, I was homeless and lived a rough life by couch surfing with friends or family that lived closer to the university. Sometimes I didn't have money for food, and it was a tough journey, but I never gave up, even though I was a young, vulnerable Indigenous woman living in the city. In my final year of university, I gave birth to my daughter, Nova, during spring break, and was back in class 4 days later. I look back at that now and wonder how the heck I did it, but I know I was following my dreams and realizing I needed to provide a better life for my daughter and I. So that is what kept me going. And this photo was taken right after I completed my last exam for my degree. This is why this photo is so special. I was really tired here, but can't really tell. And you know, if you have a newborn, like, you know how you don't get any sleep. So throw that into the mix with studying, and I was also working as well. So in June 2014, I had my graduation ceremony and received my Bachelor of Arts Degree. And it was in sociology with a minor in Native Studies. And then I dedicated it to my late grandparents. And this is my mom hugging me after the ceremony. It was very emotional. And a photo of my daughter and I. This was another monumental achievement, as again, I am the first person in my family to graduate from university. So after graduation, I used my degree to go get my first professional entry-level job, and I was hired by the Center for Aboriginal Human Resource Development as an employment counselor. And they are the largest Indigenous employment agency in Canada, but they are based right here in Winnipeg. And 5 months later, I was promoted to the Director of Employment Services as CARD. That's just a shorter way to pronounce the Center for Aboriginal Human Resource Development. And then during this time, I had my son, Leonardo, and I was also in an unhealthy relationship at that point, and I decided to leave. And in September 2016, I bought my own vehicle and I was able to get a discount using my degree, which was pretty cool because I didn't know things like that existed with dealerships. And by December 2016, I had saved up enough money for a down payment and was able to take out my own mortgage and my house that I live in now. And after leaving that unhealthy relationship, I felt I needed to go home to heal and to be with family, because now I had 2 small children and I was by myself in the city. So my kids and I moved back to the PA in 2017 after I accepted the position as Economic Development Director. And one of the highlights of my professional career was getting my tri-community, which is the PA, the rural municipality of Kelsey, and my reservation, Opaskwayak Cree Nation, to apply together to this competition called the Smart Cities Challenge. And I was an intricate part of that project team. And also the communications liaison for the 3 communities and ensuring we made it as a finalist. So that was not an easy job, talking to 3 different communities at the same time, trying to convince them all to work together. But it actually worked in my favor because I knew someone on each of those that were like part chief and council, that were mayor and council, and that were the Reeve and council. So being from that community, I was able to get everyone to kind of just partner and overlook past differences. So it was successful, and my tribe community was a top 20 finalist in all of Canada. And we received $250,000 to develop our business plan for our Smart Cities application. And it was actually a LED smart farm that my community of Opaskwayak Cree Nation was piloting in partnership with Koreans. And that was the idea that ended up going on the application. And that is what got us through to being a top 20 finalist in all of Canada. It was pretty overwhelming when we found out the news. And this picture was actually taken before we even found out, but we had to submit something together. I think every community did. And this is an article that our local newspaper did, and I am pretty proud of this as well because they did give me this nice compliment. So that was one of the highlights of my professional career, and I was very happy that I actually did go home and help make this happen. So I was doing well in my community, but I missed my house and life in Winnipeg, and I still had the dream of becoming a pilot. Then Manitoba Aerospace posted a position for recruitment specialist, and I was a successful candidate in July 2019. So as my first assignment, I was directed to focus on Indigenous engagement and recruitment. The aviation industry is facing large shortages, and Indigenous people make up only 4% of the employees in that market. And this is according to an LMI report from the Canadian Council for Aerospace and Aviation. So when I got the job with Manitoba Aerospace, I was so happy to be in the industry that I was working so hard to be a part of. And I quickly joined the Manitoba 99s, which is a group of women pilots. And I joined Women in Aviation International. I also volunteered for Girls in Aviation Day and other aviation events. Basically, it was to help me with applications for scholarships and bursaries, because it looks really good when you spend your time, you know, working with other aviation and aerospace groups. And I began working on several initiatives with Manitoba Aerospace. And then the pandemic hit. So during this time, I also applied with the First Nations Technical Institute program, which is known as FNTI, and they are based in Ontario, or Tyendinaga, Ontario. And they offer an aviation diploma program for both the private pilot's license as well as the commercial pilot's license. So when I was accepted, I was one of 8 selected out of hundreds of Indigenous applicants across Canada. And I had won a full scholarship to pay for my first year, which would cover my private pilot's license. So ground school was 3 times a week, 2 hours a day, which was a lot, with flight school, working full time, and taking care of my kids. So thankfully, Manitoba Aerospace gave me the flexibility to do some work from home, which was quite rare at that time. During the pandemic, everyone was now working from home, and my kids were doing their school online as well. And this was, so in December 2020, I successfully completed ground school. And this was another proud moment, as I had tried over 9 times to get through ground school, because I would always have to withdraw due to lack of funding. And I then had to make one of the toughest decisions of my entire life. I chose to travel to Tyendinaga, Ontario to complete the in-person practicum flight training with First Nations Technical Institute. And this was extremely difficult because I had to be apart from my children for who stayed with my mother for 13 weeks. So this was not easy, but it paid off. And on September 3rd, 2021, I passed my flight test for my private pilot's license, becoming the first female Indigenous pilot from my community, Opaskwayak Cree Nation. So what most people didn't see was how many times I almost gave up, but I had a tremendous team supporting me, encouraging me through this time that I was apart from my kids. If I could turn this volume down. Sorry, I'm just gonna show you guys a video. I gotta press something different. Just give me 1 second, sorry. Are you able to see that? Working?
Video?
Yeah. Or no, the
it's
screen.
still stuck on the education screen.
Okay. Okay, now,
Oh, there we go.
is it good?
Picture of you, that's what I'm doing. Ah,
Um, so it's just showing you one of the happiest moments of my
yeah.
life.
Those
is-
are alligator tears. Alligator. Alligator.
It's just kind of, oh, sorry, my volume was turned down. I might have to redo this.
I think you just press from current slide beside from beginning.
Okay, is that working?
Yeah, and then
Switch it
change
again.
Yep, there we go.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that, but my uncle's pretty loud in the video, so I was trying to mute him. But yeah, they really wanted to capture that. Like when I got to my mom's house, I actually traveled for like 2 days. I drove from Ontario straight back to the Paw, and I actually had to stop at my house here in Winnipeg to sleep for the night. And when I got to my parents, they stopped me at the door. They're in the room. They don't know you're here yet. And like, I just wanted to hug them so bad. So they made me wait in the living room there while they went and got them so they could capture that. But like, I was just dying to hug them. And it was so hard being apart that long. And they still bug me about that too. Like the little guilt trip, like, remember when you left us in the Paw for the summer? But you know, it was worth it because I did have to leave them for those 13 weeks so that I could complete this goal, and I did it. So I was able to show them that if they have a dream, they can accomplish it too. So it was
Picture of you, that's what I'm doing. Ah.
sorry, I'm going to change it to the next one. There we go. Okay. So after that happened, I had like media and my community reaching out. Because like through my entire journey, I was documenting it on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. So I was just kind of showing also like my team back in Winnipeg that I was actually like just showing them on a daily basis, like what I was doing for training. So what that ended up doing was I ended up getting a following of people following my entire pilot's license journey. And I was acknowledged by our Manitoba Legislative Assembly and a member statement from our current MLA. Her name's Amanda Laughlin. And CTV News did a story on me as well. And I was also able to win and secure another full scholarship that will pay for the rest of my commercial pilot's license. And because of that story on CTV, Gary Bell, the CEO of Comair, saw that story, and in February 2023 of last year, I started working at Comair as their community engagement specialist, and I'm actively working on completing my flight training. And I have the next few weeks off to review and then write my commercial pilot's license exam. I'm also close to completing my night rating and aerobatic rating. So I'm going to show you a few videos of my training that I thought would be nice to share with you. So this first video is of me doing a loop with recovery. So this is part of the aerobatic training. And then a lot of training goes into that. I think I did like a few sessions, and my instructor is actually in the back of me. So I'm in front of the plane. You can kind of see his leg. But the next video I have is of me doing a spin with recovery. So both of these maneuvers are for my aerobatic ratings. And I'll show you the next one. So this is pretty much like a life-saving maneuver that every pilot needs to recognize and learn to recover from. He was happy with that one, gave me a thumbs up. So that's our chief pilot. His name's Luke Penner. He also participates in a lot of aerobatic competitions around the world. And, you know, so I love what I do. I am in the industry that I've, you know, worked my whole life to be part of. And every pilot I know has a different path and journey that is unique to them. And my first ever flight was on a Comair flight to Winnipeg when I was 17. And I'm excited to share with you today that Comair plans to get me on the flight line as one of their commercial pilots this winter 2024. And this is a full circle moment for me because the plan was always to work for a commercial airliner and been asked to give some advice. So in closing, my advice to anyone with a dream who might be afraid to go after it, don't be, just take it one step at a time. I failed many times before I was successful. And with each failure, I learned something from it. And you also need to believe in yourself and at the same time, protect your energy and who you allow into your life. Invest in yourself and your education, because I promise you it will be worth it. And thanks for listening to my story today.
Wow, that is super cool. Even just watching that video going upside down or like your flips, I'm just like, oh shit, feels like dizzy.
Yeah.
But anyway, does anybody have any questions for Kimberly?
Oh,
There's one. Leanne says, congrats. Thank you for sharing. I don't know if you can see the chat box.
yeah,
there.
it's
Is that
like
the-
reacting.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how
well,
many years to become a pilot?
well, it depends, you know, like because I'm working full time and my job does allow me to take time off to go fly. I've been working on this now. This will be my 4th year because I started in 2020. Because everyone needs a private pilot's license. So that's like the base license everyone needs, but that's the hardest hurdle to like overcome because no one funds it. It's considered a recreational license. So that's why a lot of pilots have a hard time making it to the commercial pilot's license, because that's when you start being able to access funding and like banks will offer you loans for it, and there's lots of scholarships and bursaries available. So after I got past the PPL, I just like anything that I pretty much applied for scholarships and bursaries, like I would win them. So it's you know, it's pretty there's a lot of funding available out there, but it's just after you finish the private pilot's license. And I know some bands will fund it. Mine did for just the student allowance, but the tuition was really expensive. So it just depends on, you know, what school you go to. And there's just a lot of factors that play into it as well.
Wow. Is it just like Is it like a post-secondary?
So FNTI is a recognized post-secondary school. So with them, my band was able to fund just a student allowance, and FNTI actually applied for a bursary with them, which covered it. So I was like fully funded for that first year. Then after I got that, I applied with Women in Aviation International, which gave me a full scholarship, which is paying for my commercial pilot's license right now. So it just depends. I know people that are taking out bank loans. There's schools that actually offer that. So there's one in Moncton, BC, and Commer actually just launched 2 programs which are fully funded, but it's for Indigenous applicants. So I get to promote those programs as well. There's a training in Thompson, Manitoba, and they have an intake every year. It varies though, depending on when when the previous class finishes, and then they're able to take on new applicants. They just recently launched one. They're now accepting applications in Nunavut for Rankin Inlet. They're starting a flight school out there. So it's expanding, and I get to talk about those things with schools across Manitoba and Nunavut. But I am going to leave my email here if anyone wants to ask me any questions that way.
Well, that's super cool. I think that's really cool what you're doing. Congratulations, and thank you for sharing your story with us. Does anybody else want a question before we say bye? No, alrighty. Okay, well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay, thanks for having me. Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.